So how much can I really earn as an English teacher in China? Hey guys, I'm Sonia.
And I'm Erin.
And we're two broke girlies traveling the world together. Welcome to our channel.
For those of you that are new to our channel, hello.
A bit about us. We spent 1 year as an English teacher at a Hagwon in South Korea. We saved up for that year, then we went traveling around the world to 13 different countries, and now we're living and working at a public school in China.
If you want to know the requirements and process on how to become an English teacher in China or South Korea, go and watch our latest video on our channel where we discuss step by step how you can become an ESL teacher.
But today we are going to chat about salary expectations of an ESL teacher in South Korea and China.
Okay, let's start with South Korea. Typically, the salary range is between 2.1 million to 2.7 million won per month. And this basically equals around 27,000 Rand to 35,000 Rand or 1,500 to 2,000 US dollars.
Now, income tax in South Korea is super low. It's usually about 3% of your salary, and your employer will pay half of that and you'll pay the other half. So you'll only be paying 1.5% of your salary to income tax. And your accommodation should be provided by your school for free. So it's nothing glamorous, but typically when you work as an ESL teacher in South Korea, you get free accommodation. You'll never have to pay for your accommodation. It's usually a small little place. Some might say it's the size of a little box.
It is.
It's true, can confirm.
Yeah.
But it's free nevertheless, so you have large saving potentials.
Your salary range typically depends on your level of experience, but we'll be totally transparent with you guys. It is possible to get a salary in the higher range with little or not much experience. To be honest, we started working in South Korea with very little experience and we were getting 2.7 million won per month.
However, you should consider it a potential red flag if your school is willing to give you such a high salary with very little experience. It usually means that they're compensating for something.
Let's just say, if a school's turnover rate is so high that their only option is to increase the salary to get teachers to come, please run away.
Immediately!
But we can chat about ESL red flags in another video.
So we're not saying that you shouldn't go for a job that offers a higher salary range. We're just saying that at the end of the day, it's not just about salary. Make sure you do your research on the school, chat to other teachers that work at the school, and find out what you can. Because trust me, a slightly higher pay is not worth any toxic work environment.
For example, if a school makes you teach 10 lessons a day, each lesson is 40 minutes long, and you only get a 35-minute lunch break,
run! We're speaking from experience.
At our Hagwon, we were teaching 5 lessons in the morning to kindergarten students and then 5 lessons in the afternoon to primary students. And on top of that, our hours felt so long. Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, we were working from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we were working from 9 a.m. to 6:40 p.m.
6:40.
It's hectic.
We also weren't allowed to sit in class and we didn't even have a teacher's desk, so we had to stand all day long.
And they'd watch us on CCTV and send us a message like, "Why are you sitting?" Even if we're sitting for like 5 minutes.
Even during test time.
Even during exam time.
It's giving toxic. It was rough. It was hectic.
So moral of the story, don't take the first highest paying job that you find.
Like we did.
Rather research the school first.
For the most part, you could probably get like a 2.4 million won salary for your first time job in South Korea. That's definitely doable.
Your salary will depend on the type of school that you join in South Korea. Let's just chat about the kinds of schools that we have. Firstly, you have EPIK and then you have Hagwons.
So EPIK is basically the public schooling system in South Korea. And a Hagwon is a private English academy. With EPIK, you are kind of the only English teacher at that school. And at a Hagwon, you have about a handful of other foreign English teachers working with you. Think of EPIK as like a public school. Everything they learn will be in Korean, and then English is just an additional language that they have. Like we have back in South Africa, where Afrikaans is just an additional language. Whereas with a Hagwon, they take their English a lot more seriously. Like the Hagwon that we taught at, it was fully in English. It was a private English academy, so students would go there after their kindergarten or their school, and the entire thing would just be in English. Our school actually had an English-only policy where the students were only allowed to speak to the teachers in English.
And we found that it was actually a way to help them with their English, and their English levels were actually pretty good.
I won't lie, my kindergarten students in South Korea spoke better English than my grade ones in China, just saying.
Yeah.
Some people say that EPIK is a lot less work than Hagwons though, and it's a lot more relaxing, but apparently you get quite bored and it can get quite lonely because you don't have any other foreign English teachers with you. You're the only one, so that's just something to bear in mind.
Also, the pay is typically a bit lower at EPIK schools compared to Hagwons and private training centers. Basically, the salary can be around 1.9 to 2.2 million won a month.
However, you typically get a lot more vacation if you work at an EPIK school. It usually follows like the normal government vacation, so you'll get a nice long winter break and a nice long summer vacation. Whereas with Hagwons, you only really get like 10 days of leave per year, although it's paid vacation. Whereas with EPIK, you get those long summer vacations, but it's usually unpaid. Hagwons typically pay the most. You can earn a decent salary of about 2.4 million won to 2.7 million won per month, but the workload definitely is a lot more intense at Hagwons, and the hours are long. It's hectic, can confirm.
Yeah.
Now let's chat about salary expectations for teaching in China. This has definitely fluctuated over the years. A few years ago, you could have definitely bargained for a much higher salary, but unfortunately, salaries have dropped a little bit in recent years because the birth rate in China has actually decreased quite a lot. And so a lot of the schools have actually shut down. Hence, there's been a decrease in demand for English foreign teachers, which means salaries have decreased quite a bit.
But don't let this dishearten you. There is still a big demand for English teachers in China, and the salaries are still super high, especially for us South Africans.
Can confirm. Now, the salary range for ESL teachers in China is a bit more complex than in South Korea, but let's first chat about the types of schools in China that you can teach at.
So you get kindergarten, and basically you'll be teaching ages between 1 to 6 years old, but this job tends to feel like a lot of babysitting.
It'll generally be from like 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. and then you'll have a 1 hour lunch break. If you're lucky, you'll have a 2 or 3 hour lunch break, but typically for kindergarten, they expect you to be there most of the day with the kids.
So with kindy, it also depends because you get an ESL kindy teacher or a homeroom kindergarten teacher. They're kind of different in the sense that ESL teachers only go in to teach the English lessons, but then they'll teach a few different grades. But then a homeroom kindergarten teacher stays with their class and basically does a lot of different activities, not just English classes. And then when you are a kindergarten teacher, let's say you start with a class that is age 3, the next year you'll move up with them, and then the next year you'll move up with them again.
So it differs per school, but this is typically what they prefer. If you don't want to go up with them, you can always request to have a different age group the next year, but that's a chat you'll have with your school.
It's quite nice though, because when you build relationships with the students, it just grows even more and more over the years, and I don't know, I think it's quite rewarding in that sense.
So just a side note, homeroom kindergarten teachers do typically get paid quite a bit more than ESL kindergarten teachers, just because you're with the kids all day long. It's a lot more exhausting, it's a lot more work. So yeah, if you are worried about pay, they will pay you a bit higher if you're a homeroom teacher, just saying. Then there's primary school where you'll teach grades 1 to 6. Similar to kindergarten, you can be an ESL primary teacher or a homeroom primary teacher. We, for example, are a homeroom primary teacher. So if you're an ESL teacher, you'll only come in and teach the classes for the day and then you can leave. If you don't have classes in the afternoon, you can go home. But for us, we have to be at school during our working hours. We're lucky in the sense though, we don't work 8 till 5. We start at 8:40 a.m. and we end at 4:40 p.m. We have a 2-hour, 15-minute lunch break as well, where we can leave campus, go wherever. We also get free breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So you know what? Being a homeroom teacher ain't so bad.
Then there's middle school where you'll teach grades 7 to 9.
And then there's high school where you'll teach grades 10, 11, and 12. And you can also teach at universities. However, universities don't really pay ESL teachers as much as you'd think. Like in South Africa, university lecturers get paid a lot more than regular teachers. But here in China, I feel like you can earn more money as a kindergarten or a high school teacher compared to a university lecturer. It obviously depends where and how qualified you are, but typically high school teachers, that's where it's at. But we'll chat about that just now.
Then there's also public schools and private training centers.
Now, based on our personal experience and just advice that we've gotten from every person ever, don't teach at private training centers.
Private training centers are similar to Hagwons in the sense that they will work you to the bone until you are so exhausted you don't know what to do with yourself. It is totally not worth it.
Love yourself.
Respect yourself.
Let's chat salary.
Show me the money.
So as an ESL teacher in China, you can earn anywhere between 15,000 RMB to 40,000 RMB per month.
So that's about 38,000 Rand all the way to 100,000 Rand.
Or 2,100 US dollars to 5,600 US dollars.
So it's a big range.
But already the lowest salary bracket in China is already higher than the highest salary in South Korea.
But that's a conversation for another time.
So how do you know what salary range to expect in China?
Am I worth the 38,000 or the 100,000 Rand?
These are the questions.
Regarding salary expectations, this is going to differ based on the city that you live in. For example, the more expensive cities like Shanghai and Beijing, you will typically earn more, probably between 25 and 30,000 RMB a month.
Yeah, so you may get a higher salary in those more expensive cities, but don't be fooled. The standard of living is much higher in these cities. You may think that you're making more money here, but you're going to be spending half your salary on rent and living costs. Trust me, you'd rather be earning like 24,000 RMB in a smaller city like Suzhou, Guangzhou or Hangzhou compared to 30,000 RMB in a city like Beijing or Shanghai.
In China, the more teaching experience you have, the higher the salary you will typically get. If you're starting out at a school with zero working experience, I think you could get between 16 and 18,000 RMB per month. If you have got a little bit of years of experience, I think you can negotiate around 20 to 22,000 RMB a month.
Yeah, so if you have like a year's teaching experience, you could get between 20 to 22,000 RMB per month. If you have 2 or more years of teaching experience, you could definitely get like 24,000 RMB per month or even more.
In China, you don't have to have a degree in education. For example, Sonia has a degree in marketing and I have a degree in science. However, if you do have a degree in education, you can negotiate a higher salary.
For sure. They also really value teaching experience in China. So if you're working for your first year in China and your salary is not that high, don't let it discourage you. It's worth sticking through that first year because once you have that 1 year of teaching experience in China, you can negotiate a much better salary in your second year, at least like 24 to 25,000 RMB. So do it.
Now, like we said earlier, the salaries in China are a little bit more complex than the salaries in South Korea. So for ESL teachers in South Korea, schools will basically give you free accommodation, whereas in China, schools will give you an allowance for accommodation.
So they don't pay for your rent, but they contribute towards it. For example, some schools give a 4,000 RMB allowance, some schools may give you 2,000, some schools even offer 8,000 RMB allowance. It just depends on the area and depends on the school. Although some kindergartens in China will offer you free accommodation on campus, but it's often like a little dorm and it's on campus. So it's quite small. So you'll be close to school, but you basically live at school. And most people would prefer not to be living where they work, so you'd rather just take the rent allowance, which they often give you an option to do. They don't force you to live on campus. They're like, you can get this free accommodation or we can give you some money towards your own accommodation. And people usually opt for the latter.
Something important to note is that some schools will say the salary is 24,000 RMB inclusive of accommodation allowance. So say now your accommodation allowance is 4,000 RMB. That means your salary is 20,000 RMB, not a salary of 24,000 RMB plus an additional 4,000 RMB. Just make sure that when you choose a school, you make sure how much is your salary and is it inclusive of your accommodation allowance or not.
Another important thing to find out from your school is whether your vacation is paid or unpaid. Some schools offer 3 months of paid vacation. Some schools offer half paid vacation and some schools offer only unpaid. This is an important question to ask your school during the interview process. For example, at our current school in China, we get all national Chinese holidays off and we get paid fully for those. We also get a week of holiday for Christmas that's fully paid. And then in the winter vacation, we get half paid. And then we get a 6-week summer vacation, which is fully unpaid. We were willing to take the 6 weeks of unpaid summer vacation because our salary is good enough to last us for the year and we deserve that travel time.
Absolutely. Now let's chat severance pay. In China, there isn't really a thing called severance pay, but in South Korea, you do get a severance pay after you complete your contract.
So after finishing your 12-month contract in South Korea, you usually get a 13th paycheck. This is essentially like a completion bonus. Whereas in China, severance pay doesn't really seem to be a thing, but you get like a contract renewal bonus. So if you sign a contract again at the same school for the second year, they'll give you like an extra something. Although it's not usually as much as a 13th paycheck. It's usually a couple thousand RMB, somewhere between 6,000 to 10,000 RMB. But it depends on the school.
Also, your school should reimburse your flight costs. This goes for both South Korea and China. So the school doesn't provide you with flights. They don't pay for it up front, but after you arrive or at the end of your contract, they will reimburse what you paid for the flights. We noticed that schools in South Korea are a lot more generous in terms of paying for your full flight to South Korea and then covering the flight home as well. But in China, they kind of just give you a value and it's not really enough to cover both your flight there and home.
However, in China, they give you kind of like a yearly travel allowance. This definitely doesn't cover the full cost of your flight there and home, but it covers maybe about half.
Something else to note is that the age that you teach will also influence your salaries.
This is specific for China though.
Yeah, so high schools pay the highest, and especially if you are a specialized teacher, for example, an economics teacher, maths, PE, music teacher,
drama.
They get paid the highest. Their salaries are usually between 30,000 RMB and 38,000 RMB a month.
Girl, that's like 100,000 rand a month.
And they get 3 months of fully paid vacay.
And high rent allowance. So if you're a qualified high school teacher, you should be teaching in China.
The next highest salary would probably be for middle school,
and then kindergarten,
and then primary school. Now, once again, it does depend on your experience. You can still earn a high salary as a primary school teacher, but for the most part, you will get a little bit less because the work is a little bit easier.
So what about tax in China? Well, tax is a bit more complicated in China compared to South Korea. When we worked in South Korea, our income tax remained the same throughout the entire year. However, in China, the tax rate is constantly increasing and decreasing every single month. It doesn't change too drastically though, so don't worry about it.
Unfortunately, we can't give specific numbers for the tax because it does depend on which city you live in as well as your salary bracket. But typically, your tax will be between 10% and 20% of your monthly income. So let's say you have a salary of 24,000 RMB a month, you can maybe expect to pay tax of around 2,000 RMB.
So as you can see, the salary expectations for an ESL teacher are definitely quite a lot higher in China compared to South Korea, which is one of the reasons why we decided to move to China.
However, at the end of the day, it still comes down to personal preference. And if you want to hear about our experience of China versus South Korea, let us know in the comments and we can make a video chatting about our recommendations and the experience overall.
And if you found this video helpful, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We'd really appreciate the support.
If you have any questions at all, please feel free to leave comments. We are more than happy to give you as much help as we can.
We'll see you so soon, but for now, bye besties!